Hi guys, how you going? It's KitFox here. I'm here doing my first ever review and I've chosen to do Final Fantasy 15 today, basically for a couple reasons. One, because I've been a fan since the SNES games. Two, because I really want to test out the Elgato game capture card that was loaned to me thanks to GameStar. So shout out to Elgato, GameStar, and everybody else who made this happen. XSplit, Split Media Labs. Thank you so much. I thought I would wait until I finished the game before I delivered an actual review, just because I like to do that sort of thing. I like to not jump the gun, so to speak, when it comes to reviews, because the ending might be fantastic or the gameplay might suck. So I like to balance it out and get a nice, even level playing field when I do a review. So, what you're going to see here in the video is, there is one minor spoiler, and that is, I'm going to knock it out of the way now. It's only minor, is that the car, you probably already know this, the Regalia, turns itself into an airship, the Regalia Type F. So, that's basically the only spoiler that you're going to see in this video. What I'm going to be doing is, I'm going to be fighting a Malborodoom while I talk about the game itself. So I'm going to start off with the nostalgia factor. Now, they say at the start of the game, it comes up with a screen that says, a Final Fantasy for first-timers and old-school players. Something to that effect. And to be fair, as an old-school gamer, something that was looking to sort of rekindle their love with Final Fantasy after it took so long to be released and after the flops that have come before it, it kind of delivers in that respect. It delivers in the sense that you connect with the characters. The story is not too bad, but towards the end it's not so great either, but we'll get to that a little bit further on. So the nostalgia factor is definitely something I look for when I play a Final Fantasy game, and it's great to see this one actually delivering on that. It's got the old school Final Fantasy flavour. You would think it's got chocobos, lots of sword, lots of magic. It's got the 3-tier magic spells, you know, the Cure, Cura, Curaga. Actually, I tell a lie, there's actually no Cure spells. It's Fire, Firaga. So, when you play the game, you definitely can tell that it is a Final Fantasy game, which is a good thing. It doesn't feel like Square Enix have tried to do something else. So, it's good to that effect. Now, another thing I looked for, as well as the nostalgia factor, is the soundtrack. Now, the soundtrack is something that I personally love as a Final Fantasy fan. It's probably the number one thing that has connected me to the games. Now, Nobuo Uematsu was one of the greatest video game composers, of all time. I've been to several concerts of his around the country, even. I've been to Adelaide, Sydney. I'm going to be going to the one in Melbourne. The soundtrack is something that really draws a lot of players to Final Fantasy 15, and this one is not so bad. They actually got Florence and the Machine to record the main theme, which is a big step for video game composers when you think about it, because they would have written a song for the game and then Florence would have performed it, or they would have gotten Florence to write the song and then, you know, obviously deliver the song. But regardless, it still fits the theme. They've had real life artists perform songs in previous Final Fantasies as well, and they even had live performances at those concerts I aforementioned before. Now, the reason that my portrait is in the position that it's in here is because you're going to see the combat scene very, very soon. I'm going to be fighting a Malborodoom. But back onto the soundtrack, I think it delivers. So I gave the soundtrack a 7 out of 10. It definitely is not Nobuo Uematsu. So don't come into this... Sorry for my hair, it's just terrible at the moment. So don't come into this thinking that Nobuo Uematsu has written this and it's going to be 100% perfect. It's not, but it's not bad. I particularly like the fact that you can actually buy the soundtracks of the previous games and play them in your Regalia. I love that. I absolutely love that. Now, onto the gameplay here. As we get into the fight, setting up a fight takes a long time, as you probably just saw on the screen there. You have to craft your magic spells, you have to equip your weapons, you have to scan your enemy every single time so that you know what they are weak against. Now, this fight took me a while, so bear with me here. but you can see here that you have to scan the enemy to obtain its elemental weakness every time. Now, the combat system isn't perfect. The main tactic that they employ here is basically get behind your opponent and deal extra damage, or exploit your enemy's elemental weakness and deal orange damage, bonus damage, or you use the weapon that they are, might particularly aligned with. So a bomb might be aligned with fire. If you use a fire weapon against it, it might absorb it, or it might deal purple damage. So you don't want to deal purple damage, and you don't want to be dealing green damage. Green damage means they heal. So basically the three tactics are purple damage, orange damage, and get behind them to make sure that you deal extra damage. That's basically the extent of gameplay, which is a little bit disappointing. As an old school gamer, I'm interested in a lot more mechanics for different fights. You don't really feel, apart from like a fight like this, which is actually a hunt, it's not part of the main story, that the you don't feel like you're fighting a boss apart from this fight. Like, you don't really, there's no grand, amazing, look at this guy, he does some sick moves. It's very mellow. And that's because they've tried to blend the Final Fantasy world with the real world. I mean, if you look closely as well, there's real world similarities and advertising, which I'll get to later on. Oh god, the advertising really annoyed me in this game, but the over-leveling is a problem in this. You can over-level yourself very easily. I found myself a good 30 levels above where I needed to be for the story quest, and really all I was doing for the side quests was doing the repetitive stuff like collecting dog tags, finding frogs, kill this big bad guy, and come back and bring me this rare ingredient. That was basically it. So I definitely think they could have expanded it a little bit more on that. But where they lack in gameplay and where they lack in story, which I'll get onto forward, this game is gorgeous. It is 100% brilliant. They've poured a lot of time and effort into detailing this game. Now, I played this on PS4, and we all know the graphic comparisons between Xbox, PS4, and PC. This is actually not bad. I captured it at 720 frames. It comes out alright, but I give that a 9 out of 10. It is absolutely gorgeous. 10 years development spent. It was mainly poured into making this game look beautiful. It could have been spent on the story. It could have been spent on developing the characters a little bit more. They set up a few villains which just die off. They just kill them off. It's crazy. We've all heard the stories about Chapter 13, and I know I'm putting this review up a little bit late because I missed a procrastination, but they drop the ball a lot when it comes to story. You can see here in this fight what has happened. You cast lightning. The world interaction is fantastic. I pour that into the 9 out of 10 I give the graphics. Now, see here I'm fighting in a small pond of water, and you cast thunder in that water. Basically that small patch gets completely electrified. Now, when I cast a blizzard spell, it freezes in place. Now, I spent so long thinking, what the hell is happening? I can't move, I can't use items, what's going on? It was just me being an idiot and casting Blizzard into the water, freezing my ankles into the water, and being unable to act for 30 seconds to a minute or whatever it was, which was a very nice touch, I thought. But anyway, the fire, it's temporarily, it destroys trees. The day and night works very, very well. I thought that nighttime all the demons come out, so your classic Final Fantasy enemies, which might be considered sort of evil, like your bombs, your Jimbos, basically any real baddie like a Buell or an Airman with the big eye or something like that. See, anything organic like a Malboro or an Adamantoise or something like that would come out during the day, but anything that's a little bit scary, a little bit mean looking, a little bit demonic comes out at night, which I thought worked very, very well, and a lot of the classic Final Fantasy enemies come out at night. Now, onto the story. The story needs a lot of work. I've given it a 4 out of 10. Now, it starts very, very slowly, in the sense that having said that, the game starts out slow. The story itself, overall, starts brilliantly. If you watch Kingsglaive, and before that, if you watch the animated series Brotherhood on YouTube, That's a 4-part series. First time Final Fantasy was animated. Spot on, by the way. That they set that story up brilliantly. You can see what happens. The Nifs are trying to invade the kingdom of Lucis, and King Regis, using the ring of the Luci, which drains his power, it's straining him to keep himself alive. Now, that sets it up very, very well. Kingsglaive and Brotherhood, but then we get into this game. This game starts with 4 guys going on a road trip, and they're completely oblivious to what's happened in the events of Kingsglaive, i.e. the Nifs have come along and your father's just been slain. They're completely oblivious. So what you're doing is you've watched Kingsglaive, Regis has been slain, and you're thinking, bugger, we've got to get in here, we've got to get back and save the kingdom. And the story actually starts a little bit before that actually happens, and then when they finally do find out it happened, that it's like, well, you know, crap, we're going to have to go back and fight it. But you still plod around, even though your father's just been slain, your kingdom's been overrun, your friends and family are now prisoners of war. But you still think it's cool to go around and raid dungeons, and do hunts, and beef up your car, put superchargers on it and stuff like that. I mean, sure, you could argue that the dungeon part is kind of looking towards getting your kingdom back because you obtain the royal weapons from those tombs, but I think it just all takes far too long for something so drastic to happen. I think they really could have worked on it a lot. Now you get to chapter 13, and chapter 13 is like Swiss cheese. It is just full of holes. You can see here, it took me ages to figure out what the hell was going on. I've actually just frozen myself in ice. Interesting. Anyway, where was I? Oh, chapter 13. Holes in it like you wouldn't believe. It's like someone's done a drive-by and just completely shot it up, riddled with holes. They set up several main enemies. You've got the Emperor Aldercapt. You've got Ravus of Tenebrae, who lost his arm somewhere and got given a Magitech arm, demonic-looking thing. Pretty cool. He switches sides. He was supposed to be on your side. He's now commanding the armies for the Emperor. When you get there again, spoiler alert, he does actually... Well, somehow he switched sides again. So he goes 1, 2... He switches sides 3 times. He's confused. We'll leave that alone. But you play through chapter 13. You're forced to use the Ring of the Luci, and it sucks. Like, sure, it's got a death spell, but it doesn't tell you that it takes, 5 minutes to charge up that death spell. And then by that time, the enemy can easily interrupt that. So, like, basically, you're by yourself. You've got this crappy little ring. You've got this plot hole that you don't basically know what's going on. And I think that personally, I think that they've done that for DLC, which I am against as a gamer. I believe that for a story, and for a game, especially a game like Final Fantasy, you want to deliver the story complete with Easter eggs for people to discover later on. But that's just me as a nostalgic gamer. In this new world, I can understand the monetization of things. People want extra content, and people are willing to pay for that extra content. So I get it. There's plot holes. Gladio leaves the party at one stage, and he comes back and he's all cut up. And you don't really know why. You don't know why. I reckon that's for DLC, right? Something happens to Ignis. I won't tell you what happens to Ignis because it's pretty full on when you go to Altissia, but you just drops it. You just move on for it. It's massive. You just drop it and it moves on. It's huge. Prompto drops a massive bombshell later on. And they just let it go. And it's riddled with holes. It's everywhere. But I reckon it's all for DLC. Everybody leaves the party at some stage. Gladio leaves. Ignis leaves. Prompto leaves. And you're by yourself at some stage. So that's all DLC holes here. I reckon later on they'll announce that DLC. We'll see. Hopefully I'm right. Anyway, the story, it really, really does need work. It doesn't feel like Final Fantasy. It doesn't close out like a Final Fantasy game either, which is disappointing. However, it does kind of play like one, in the sense that you got those classic enemies. You have a kind of similar battle system. If you play Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy 13, it's very similar to those games. I love the turn-based. My girlfriend hates it. that's just me, that's just her. But I love it. I miss turn-based, and you can see here I'm a little bit undiscovered. That fight took me way too long. It took me far too long. So I've got, what's that? About 5 minutes left towards the end of the video. Overall, look, I give Final Fantasy, I give it a 7 out of 10. I mean, there's a lot that could have worked on. The story in particular really let me down, but the soundtrack, I love the sound options. I love the fact that you can get your Chocobo to come in and help you in the party. Like, that's a nice little touch. You obviously have to level him up as well, feed him the right greens. Another fantastic thing to do, but there was a lot of missed opportunities. There was the World of Ruin. I won't say exactly what happens, but there's the World of Ruin. You know the nights are getting longer, the world is getting darker. It eventually does get to the point where there was a missed opportunity there, and a lot could have been done with that. They kind of box you into following the story, and I just think that they could have done so much with that. Even the dungeons could have been reworked in that stage. It doesn't matter. Hopefully that might be another DLC. Who knows with the way that they're monetizing things lately. Hopefully they get their next couple titles right. Hopefully they get Kingdom Hearts 3 right. That's going to be a massive one. Hopefully they nail that one. And hopefully, there's already talks in the works of Final Fantasy 16. Nothing's been released yet, but there are whispers. But I just hope that it's going to be good. Overall, like I said, 7 out of 10 for Final Fantasy 15, and I hope this review has helped you. I definitely recommend you play it. I definitely recommend you come into it with an open mind. Don't come into it expecting something. Come into it with a clean slate and you'll be pleasantly surprised. The characters have great depth. The story is not so bad, but there is room for them to fix that later on with the DLC. So give it a chance. Give it a go. The fishing's a nice touch as well. Everybody has their own little special abilities. But I'm going to shut the video off there. Once again, my name's Kit Fox. Thank you once again for watching. Hope you enjoyed the review. Thanks to everybody and everything who made this possible. Thanks for watching.